The boardroom smelled like expensive coffee and cheap betrayal. I walked in at 8:59, right on schedule. Victor Lin from Sequoia was already there, scrolling through his phone. Diana Yu, my CFO, gave me a look, the one she uses when the numbers don't add up. Marcus Holt, my general counsel, sat perfectly still, his eyes tracking every entrance. Evelyn was already at the head of the table. That was the first red flag. She doesn't like sitting there unless she's playing CEO. Beside her was Julian Reeves. That was the second, bigger red flag. Julian hadn't been in a Vance Link board meeting since the Series B party 3 years ago, where he spent most of the night telling everyone how the soul of tech was dying. I nodded at the room. Morning. Evelyn didn't look up from her iPad. Nathan, glad you could join us. I set my water bottle down. It's my meeting. Evelyn, I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. Julian offered a soft smile. Good to see you. Nathan, thanks for making time. I ignored him. I looked at Diana. We ready to go over the Q3 projections? Marcus cleared his throat. Actually, Nathan, there's a different item on the agenda today. Evelyn finally looked up. Her eyes were cold. We're voting on a restructuring proposal. I leaned back. Restructuring. Since when? Since last night, she said, sliding a thin folder across the table toward me. Over dinner. I opened it. The first page had one title: Leadership Transition and Governance Realignment. Below it, bullet points. Appoint Julian Reeves as Chief Executive Officer. Transition Nathan Vance to Chief Innovation Advisor. Consolidate voting control under the Carlyle Family Trust. I turned the page. There was a draft 8K, pre-written. I closed the folder. You gotta be kidding me. Julian leaned forward, his voice low and reasonable. Nathan, this isn't a demotion. It's a refocusing. You built the engine. I want to steer the ship towards something more human, less transactional. I looked at him. The only thing less transactional here is your brain. Julian, we're running an AI infrastructure platform, not a poetry slam. Evelyn's jaw tightened. Watch your tone. I'll watch whatever I want. I said, this is my company. I hold the Class B shares. You need my vote. Victor Lin finally spoke. Nathan, I've had a chance to review the proposal. The Carlyle Trust is offering stability during a volatile market cycle, and Julian has a compelling vision for the consumer-facing side. I stared at him. You're backing this. He shrugged. I'm keeping an open mind. Marcus slid a note in front of me. They need 67% of the voting power. With the Carlyle Trust and Lin's fund, they're at 64%. They're one vote short. I looked around the table. 3 other independent directors. 2 were Evelyn's picks from the Boston Finance Circle. The third was Sarah Chun, a Stanford professor who owed me a favor after I funded her lab's research 2 years ago. I met Sarah S.I.'s. She looked away. I tapped the folder. So this is it? You cooked this up behind my back. Bring Julian in like some prodigal son and expect me to just, what? Smile and clap? Evelyn stood up. We expected you to act like a professional. Nathan, you've been burning out. Everyone sees it. The late nights, the volatility, the way you push the teams until they break. Julian represents a new era, one of balance. I laughed. It came out sharper than I intended. Balance, right? Julian couldn't balance a checkbook without your trust fund. Evelyn, and let's not pretend this is about the company. This is about you wanting to put your high school boyfriend in a corner office so you can play queen. Julian's face flushed. That's beneath you. No, I said. What's beneath me is sitting here pretending this isn't a coup. Marcus spoke quietly. Nathan, if we vote now, we lose Sarah. That puts them over the threshold. I looked at Evelyn. You bought her. Evelyn didn't deny it. I reminded her where the next round of academic grants might be coming from. I stood up, slowly. I picked up the folder and held it out to Julian. Here, take it. Julian hesitated. I dropped it on the table. But understand this. You're not taking a company. You're taking a shell. And I'm going to enjoy watching you try to run it without the foundation I built. Evelyn stepped closer. Don't be dramatic. Nathan, I looked at her, really looked at her. The perfect blowout, the Cartier watch, the way she held her chin like the world owed her something. You just made the most expensive mistake of your life. She smiled. We'll see. The vote was called. Roll call. Victor Lin. Aye. Director 1. Aye. Director 2. Aye. Sarah Chun. Silent for 3 seconds. Then, aye. I didn't bother with my vote. I walked out. In the elevator, Marcus hit the button for the garage. We fight or we fold. I watched the numbers descend. We don't fight. We cash out. Diana was already on the phone when we got to the car. She climbed into the back with me. I ran the numbers. If we dump on the open market, we crater the stock. We lose at least 20% to slippage. Then we don't use the open market. I said, call Paul Castellano. Tell him I have a block. 9.8 billion worth. He can have it at a 4% premium. But he needs to move fast. And he needs to keep his mouth shut until it clears. Marcus frowned. Paul's a shark. Nathan, if he smells blood, he already smells it. I cut in. Might as well make him rich while he helps us gut them. Diana covered her phone. Paul's in. He wants a term sheet by noon. Send it, I said. Then I looked at Marcus. Start the audit on the Carlyle Trust. Every wire transfer in the last 6 months. Especially anything touching Julian's personal LLCs. Marcus nodded once. If we find movement, it violates the trust indenture and the corporate governance charter. We can freeze her voting rights. Do it quietly. I said, I want her sitting in that CEO chair, signing press releases, thinking she won. Then, when the timing's right, we pull the floor out. Diana hung up. Nathan, if this leaks before the trade settles, we're looking at insider trading charges. It won't leak, I said, because the only people who know are in this car, and because I'm about to give the SEC a reason to look somewhere else. I pulled out my phone and drafted an email to the NASDAQ compliance desk. Subject line, Governance Irregularities, Vance Link AI. I kept it vague, just enough to trigger a routine inquiry that would slow down any sudden moves Evelyn tried to make. Marcus read over my shoulder. You're lighting a match while standing in gasoline. I hit send. No, I'm lighting a candle. The explosion comes later, back at my apartment. I poured a glass of scotch I didn't drink. I opened my laptop. Diana had already created the shell entity, Vance Core Technologies, Incorporated. I transferred the IP assignment agreements I'd had our legal team draft months ago, long before I ever suspected Evelyn would grow a spine. The core algorithms, the government contracts, the API licensing framework, all of it moved cleanly, legally, into a company Evelyn didn't know existed. My phone buzzed. A text from Julian. Hope you're doing okay. No hard feelings. Let's grab a drink soon and talk about the transition. I didn't reply. Another text. This one from Evelyn. The board expects your formal resignation from the CEO role by Friday. We'll announce it Monday. Try to be gracious. I typed back one sentence. You're celebrating a throne that stops existing the moment I stop propping it up. She didn't reply. I opened the terminal and checked the status of the block trade. Paul's team had confirmed the funding. The settlement date was set for Thursday. $9,800 million. Moving from his prime brokerage to my private holding company. I leaned back. Somewhere in the city, Evelyn was probably picking out a new office. Julian was likely drafting a memo about compassionate innovation. Victor Lin was calculating his carry. Sarah Chun was rationalizing her betrayal. They all thought the game was over. I closed the laptop. It was just starting. Marcus called me at 6 a.m. We've got a problem. Evelyn's moving faster than we thought. I was already at my desk. 3 monitors running. Define faster. She filed an amended Schedule 13D overnight, disclosing the restructuring as a change in control. And she's demanding immediate access to the Vance Core IP repository. Our legal team in Delaware is pushing back, but she's citing her authority as CEO. I lean back. She's not CEO yet. The resignation isn't effective until Friday, and the IP isn't in Delaware anymore. She doesn't know that, Marcus said, but she will if we keep blocking her. She'll sue for access, and discovery will lead her straight to the transfer docs. Then we don't block her. I said, we redirect her. Diana got on the line. I'm listening. Create a mirror. I told her. A virtual environment that looks exactly like the Vance core repo. Load it with outdated builds. Make sure the commit history matches up to 6 months ago. When she logs in, she gets that. Marcus exhaled. That spoliation of evidence if she finds out. Nathan, she won't find out. I said, because by the time she realizes the APIs don't connect to the live billing system, Paul will already own my shares, and I'll be long gone from the cap table. At that point, it's a civil matter between her and Paul's fund. Not my problem. Diana typed rapidly. Give me 4 hours. I'll clone the front-end architecture. The back-end will throw deprecated errors if she tries to run a live query. Convincing enough to buy us time. Do it, I said. And Marcus, dig deeper into those trust transfers. I want names, dates, and dollar amounts. If she used Carlyle money to bankroll Julian's little pet projects, we've got her on fiduciary breach. I'm already tracing a series of wires from Carlyle Holdings to a Cayman entity called Reeves Innovations. Marcus said, it's messy. Shell companies layered on top of shell companies. But there's a trail. Give me 48 hours, and I'll have a memo that'll make her trustees choke. 48 hours is too long. I said, Paul's legal team is doing final due diligence on the block trade. If they see instability in the governance structure, they'll try to renegotiate the price. I need leverage before their morning meeting in New York. I'll have a preliminary summary by noon. Marcus promised. I hung up and dialed Paul Castellano directly. He picked up on the second ring, his voice gravelly. Nathan, bit early, isn't it? Your team's reviewing the governance filings. I said, don't let Evelyn's 13D spook you. It's theater. Paul chuckled. Theater's fine. But if the leading lady's got a gun backstage, I want to know. My lawyers are asking why the new CEO is demanding access to IP that's supposedly part of the core value, because she doesn't know the core value moved. I said, the IP she's chasing is a shadow. The real assets transferred cleanly to Vance Core 6 weeks ago. Legally airtight. Your purchase is unaffected. 6 weeks. Paul repeated. You've been planning this exit for a while. Since the day I realized my wife valued her first love more than her fiduciary duty. I said, look, Paul, you want the infrastructure that powers half the federal AI contracts in this country. You're getting it. The drama at VanceLink is a sideshow. Focus on the main event. He was quiet for a beat. And if the SEC starts sniffing around the transfer, they won't. I said, not until after your trade settles. I sent a courtesy note to NASDAQ yesterday. Standard governance concerns. It'll keep them occupied with paperwork while we close. By the time they realize the IP migrated, you'll own the shares, and I'll own the technology. Clean split. You're playing with fire. Paul said, I'm selling the matches. I replied, you in or out? He laughed. I'm in, but if this blows up, Nathan, you're the one explaining it to the feds. Deal, I said, and ended the call. By 10 a.m., Diana had the mirror environment running. She patched me into a test login. I watched as a simulated version of Evelyn's credentials accessed a fake repo. The screen filled with lines of code, all time-stamped, all looking legitimate. She'll think she won. Diana said, let her. I said, send the access credentials to her assistant. Make it look like a routine IT provisioning. No fanfare. At 11:30, Marcus sent over preliminary memo. I skimmed it. There was $12 million wired from Carlyle Family Trust account number 4402 to Reeves Innovations Limited, Cayman Islands, dated 3 months prior. The purpose field, strategic advisory services, except Julian hadn't provided any services to VanceLink in that period. And the timing coincided with a spike in his personal credit card payments that matched withdrawals from the Cayman account 2 days later. Bingo, I muttered. I forwarded the memo to Marcus. Get this cleaned up. I want a formal complaint ready for the Delaware Chancery Court. Not a file yet, just a wave in Evelyn's face if she gets nosy. Then my phone buzzed. Julian, I almost declined. but curiosity won. Nathan, he said, his tone carefully neutral. I wanted to clear the air. Air's fine, I said, a bit polluted with your incompetence. But fine. He ignored the jab. Evelyn mentioned you're resisting the transition. I hope we can avoid a protracted legal battle. It's not good for the company. Or for us. Personally. Us. Personally. I repeated. There is no us. Julian, there's you, failing upward. There's Evelyn, playing corporate dress-up. And there's me, watching from a distance. We're trying to build something sustainable, he said. Something that isn't just about growth metrics and quarterly earnings. Right, I said. Sustainability. That's why you needed $12 million from her trust to stay afloat. How's the sustainable lifestyle in the Hamptons treating you? Silence. Then, his voice hardened. You're monitoring our finances. I'm reading public filings and following the money. I corrected. Big difference. And what I see is a man who couldn't innovate his way out of a paper bag without a wealthy girlfriend footing the bill. You don't know what you're talking about. Julian snapped. I know exactly what I'm talking about. I said, I know that $12 million hit a Cayman account. Then bounce back to your Amex. I know Evelyn's trustees would have a fit if they saw that. Breach of trust indenture. Misuse of charitable funds. The list goes on. So maybe ask yourself who's really threatening sustainability here. He hung up. I smiled. Predictable. An hour later, Evelyn called. No pleasantries. What did you say to Julian? That depends. I said, which lie did he tell you first? He said you're threatening us. She hissed. I'm not threatening. I said, I'm informing. There's a difference. Ask him about Reeves' innovations. Ask him about the $12 million. Better yet, ask your trustees. I'm sure they'd love to hear how their money is being used to subsidize your boyfriend's lifestyle. You wouldn't dare, she said. Watch me, I said. Or better yet, read the memo Marcus is about to send your legal team. It's a draft, but it's detailed, very detailed. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a company to dismantle. I ended the call before she could respond. Diana appeared in my doorway. The mirror environment is live. Evelyn's assistant just logged in. She's poking around the repo now. Good. I said, let her poke. How's the block trade? Paul's team finished due diligence an hour ago. They're moving to signing. Funds transfer scheduled for tomorrow morning. 9 a.m. Eastern. We're clear. Almost. I said, Marcus, you there? He joined the call. Ready, once the funds clear. I want the Vance Corps transfer documents filed publicly. I said, not before, not after, exactly when the market opens. I want the Wall Street Journal and CNBC to get the press release 30 minutes prior. I want Evelyn reading about my exit while she's sipping her celebratory champagne. And the Chancery Court filing? Marcus asked. Hold it. I said, for now, let her enjoy her new title. Let her think she's won. Then, when the dust settles and the stock starts reacting to the news that the real assets are gone, we drop the legal bomb. Make it hurt. Diana nodded. And Julian? Let him write his Medium posts. I said, let him talk about vision. By this time next week, he'll be running a company with no product, no revenue, and no future. That's punishment enough. I looked at the clock. 48 hours until the trade settled. 72 hours until the world knew. Evelyn thought she'd staged a coup. She'd just signed up for a demolition derby. And I'd already left the arena. 8:59 a.m. I was in sweatpants. Coffee gone cold beside me. 3 screens in front of me. Left, Paul Castellano's prime brokerage feed. Middle, Van Slink's order book. Right, encrypted chat with Diana and Marcus. Diana typed first. Funds in transit. Wire confirmation pending. Marcus followed. Chancery Court clerk confirms docket open. Filing ready on your mark. I didn't answer. I was watching the level 2 quotes. Thin volume. No spikes. Good. At 9:01, Diana again. Wire confirmed. $9. 8 be credited to NVH Holdings. Settlement complete. I exhaled once. Didn't move. Didn't smile. Just typed. Whole filing. Wait for my signal. Paul called 2 minutes later. Done. Money's in. You're officially a very rich man. Nathan, rich enough. I said, your compliance team happy? They're ecstatic. They get to explain to the SEC why a hedge fund just swallowed $9.8 billion in tech shares without a public tender offer. Fun times. Tell them to cite the 13 times 10 to the power of -3 exemption. You're buying from a controlling shareholder in a private transaction. Clean. They already did. Paul said. But here's the thing. Evelyn's going to lose her mind when this hits. You sure you don't want to warn her? I'm sure. I said, warnings for people who care. I don't. Paul chuckled. Cold. I like it. What's next? Next. You sit tight. You tell your analysts to keep quiet. No interviews. No leaks. If anyone asks, you're taking a long position in American innovation. Sounds patriotic. He said, I'll use it. I hung up and opened the draft press release Diana had prepped. Vance Link AI announces major strategic investment by Castellano Global Management. It buried the lead. Founder Nathan Vance transitions full equity stake in landmark transaction. Buried, but not hidden. I scheduled it for release at 9:30. Then I opened the SEC's EDGAR system, uploaded the form for showing my disposition of shares. 0 shares remaining, effective immediately. At 9:29, my phone rang. Unknown number. I picked up. Mr. Vance? A woman's voice. Professional. This is Lisa Tran with CNBC Markets. We're seeing unusual block trade activity tied to VanceLink. Can you comment? Check your inbox in 1 minute. I said, and hung up at 9:30. The press release hit every major wire. Bloomberg, Reuters, Dow Jones. Within seconds, my phone lit up. Diana, Wall Street Journal calling. Nut, FD, ignoring all. Marcus, Evelyn's legal team just emailed, demanding immediate clarification on disposition of assets. Too late. Then the call I was waiting for. Julian, I answered. Congratulations. You're officially the CEO of a company I don't own. What the fuck did you do? He shouted. Nathan, the stock's moving. People are asking questions. Why didn't you tell us? Tell you what? That I sold? Why would I spoil the surprise? You wanted the throne. Enjoy it. This is sabotage. You sold to Paul Castellano? Do you have any idea what this does to our leverage with the Fed contracts? I do. I said, it does nothing, because the Fed contracts aren't with VanceLink anymore. They're with VanceCore, which, last I checked, isn't on your org chart. Silence. Then, quieter, you move the contracts. Months ago, I said, legally, cleanly, while you were busy picking out office furniture. He swore under his breath. Evelyn's going to what? Sue me? For selling my own shares? Good luck. Oh, and Julian? Tell her to check her email. Marcus filed that chancery complaint I mentioned. Misuse of trust assets. Breach of fiduciary duty. Conversion of corporate opportunities. It's a long list. Her trustees are going to have a very bad week. I ended the call. 2 minutes later, Evelyn called. She didn't shout. She was too controlled for that. But her voice was ice. You sold. I did. I said, $9.8 billion. Correct. You moved the IP. Also correct. You're destroying everything we built. I laughed. No, Evelyn. You destroyed it the moment you brought Julian into the boardroom. I just cleaned up the wreckage and cashed the insurance check. She paused. The launch party is tonight. I know. I said, I got the invitation. Very tasteful. Soho, rooftop, open bar. I'm sure the champagne's chilling as we speak. You're not coming. Wouldn't dream of it. I said, I'd hate to ruin the mood, though you might want to warn the guests when the Wall Street Journal piece drops at 5 p.m. The mood's going to shift. Headlines already circulating internally. Vance exits. Taking core tech with him. You leaked to the Journal? I planted a seed. I said, they watered it. Free press. Another pause. Then, her voice dropped. This is personal. Nathan, always was. I said, you just Didn't realize which one of us was playing the long game. I hung up and turned back to the screens. Van Slink stock was down 7% and falling. Volume spiking. Analysts scrambling. CNBC cut to a live shot of the NASDAQ. The ticker scrolled red. Diana messaged, Paul's team confirming they'll hold the shares. No plans to flip. We've got the lockup agreement. Marcus, Evelyn's attorneys just withdrew their demand letter. They're pivoting to damage control. Too late for that. I leaned back. On the right-hand screen, a notification popped up. Internal email from VanScore's legal counsel. Subject, Federal Contract Assignments, final approval. The General Services Administration had signed off on the transfer. All active government work now officially billed through VanScore. I forwarded it to Paul. Now you own the shell. I own the machine. He replied instantly, beautiful. What's the next move? Let them celebrate. I typed, then watched them choke on the confetti. At noon, Julian sent a text. Just 3 words. You win this. I didn't reply. Winning wasn't the point. The point was making sure they understood the cost of underestimating someone they thought was just a tech nerd with a spreadsheet. Buy 4 p.m. The narrative had shifted. CNBC's headline, Van Slink shares plunge as founder exits, takes key assets. Fox Business, tech coup backfires. New CEO faces hollow victory. Even TechCrunch ran a piece, The Ghost of Van Slink. Where did the code go? Evelyn's PR team issued a statement. Van Slink remains committed to innovation under new leadership. The transition of certain intellectual property is part of a broader strategic realignment. It sounded hollow. Even they knew it. At 4:50, I got a photo sent to my burner email. The Soho venue. Guests arriving. Julian shaking hands. Looking tense. Evelyn in a white dress. Smiling for cameras. But her eyes were sharp. Searching. Probably for me. I deleted the photo. At 5 p.m., the Wall Street Journal dropped the full piece. Above the fold. Online, Nathan Vance's $9. $8 billion exit leaves Vance Link a shell. The subhead, core algorithms. Government contracts migrated to new entity days before leadership change. I read it once. Closed the tab. My phone buzzed one last time. A number I didn't recognize. I answered, Mr. Vance? A young guy. Nervous. This is Kevin. From the New Yorker. We're doing a profile. I hung up. I stood, stretched, and walked to the kitchen. Poured a fresh coffee. Checked the balance on NVH Holdings. 10 digits, including cents. I opened a new document. Title, VanScore, Phase 2. Below it, I wrote one line. They celebrated a throne. I kept the crown. Then I shut the laptop. The party was just starting. I didn't need an invite. My phone started vibrating at 7:03 p.m. I need to look at the screen. I knew who it was. I let it ring until it stopped, then watched the voicemail icon appear. I deleted it without listening. Diana texted. Stocks down 18%. Trading halted pending news. Paul's team is staying quiet. Market's panicking. Marcus followed. Evelyn's attorneys just called my cell, demanding an emergency injunction to freeze the VanScore transfers. Too bad for them. Everything's already recorded in Delaware. Judge won't touch it on a Sunday night. I typed back, let them sweat. Any word from the SEC? Marcus. Enforcement Division just opened a file. Not a formal investigation yet. Just a voluntary request for information. I'll handle it. They're focused on the 13D amendments, not the asset transfer. We're clean. Good. I switched over to the CNBC live stream. The anchor's voice was loud, even muted. Shocking turn of events at VanSlink, where shares have plunged nearly 20% after news broke that founder Nathan Vance not only sold his entire stake in a massive $9, $8 billion block trade, but also transferred the company's core intellectual property to a privately held entity called VanScore Technologies. On the split screen, they showed footage from the Soho party. Evelyn at a podium, microphone in hand, mid-sentence. I unmuted. This transition marks a new chapter for VanSlink, she was saying, her smile fixed. Under Julian's leadership, we will refocus on ethical AI and community-driven innovation. Nathan's departure, while unexpected, allows us to evolve beyond. Her words cut off as someone handed her a phone. She glanced at it, and for a split second, the smile faltered. She recovered quickly, but the camera caught it. The anchor jumped in. We're getting reports that trading in VanceLink has been temporarily halted by the New York Stock Exchange. This comes just minutes after the Wall Street Journal published a detailed report outlining how key patents and federal contracts were moved out of VanceLink weeks ago. Evelyn lowered the phone. Her knuckles were white. She leaned back toward the mic. Ladies and gentlemen, please remain calm. We are aware of the market activity and are reviewing the situation. I can assure you, VanceLink's fundamentals remain strong. Another interruption. A woman near the front, press, probably shouted a question. Ms. Carlisle, where's the core algorithm now? Is it true it's no longer owned by VanceLink? Evelyn's jaw tightened. Our legal team is assessing the IP transfer. We believe it was executed without proper board approval. Did Nathan Vance steal the code? Someone else yelled. She didn't answer. She stepped away from the podium, whispering urgently into her phone. Julian appeared beside her, his face pale under the lights. He grabbed her arm, pulling her toward the back. The cameras followed. I muted it again, texted Diana, leaked the GSA contract assignment, anonymously, to the Wall Street Journal reporter covering federal procurement. She replied, already done. Expect a follow-up story in 10. At 7:20, my burner phone rang. Unknown number. I answered. Nathan, Evelyn's voice, stripped of its polish. Raw. What the fuck is wrong with you? Nothing's wrong with me. I said, everything's exactly right. You're destroying the company. Do you have any idea what you've done to the shareholders? To the employees? I know exactly what I've done. I said, I've separated the valuable parts from the dead weight. You and Julian? Dead weight. The shareholders who stuck with you after I left? That's on them. And the employees? They'll be fine once they realize their paychecks come from Vance Cornell. You can't do this. The board voted me out. I said, I returned the favor by cashing out. Fair trade. She was breathing hard. You'll regret this. I'll sue you into oblivion. I'll make sure you never work in Silicon Valley again. Regret's not in my vocabulary. I said, and as for suing, go ahead, file your complaint. I'll see you in Delaware. Bring Julian. Bring your trustees. Bring whoever you want. I'll bring the paper trail that shows you funneled millions from your family trust into his personal accounts. Let's see how the judge feels about that. Silence. Then, quieter, you wouldn't. I already did. I said, Marcus filed the initial motion this afternoon. Expect service by tomorrow morning. Your trustees are going to love the part about the Cayman Islands. She hung up. 2 minutes later, Julian called. I answered. You motherfucker. He spat. You set us up. You've been planning this for months. You moved the contracts. You hid the IP. I built a company. I cut in. You tried to steal it. There's a difference. Steal it? Evelyn owns half the goddamn voting shares. And you own zero. I said, you're a figurehead. Julian, a pretty face she paraded around to make herself feel like she wasn't just another bored heiress playing CEO. Newsflash, you're not a visionary. You're not even competent. You're a liability she's about to regret even more than she regrets marrying me. I'll bury you. He snarled. I'll tell the world what you did, how you sabotaged your own company. Go ahead. I said, tell them. Tell them I sold my shares at a premium. Tell them I moved my own legally owned intellectual property to a company I founded. Tell them I refuse to let my life's work be gutted by a trust fund couple playing house with a Fortune 500 toy. See whose side the court takes. He swore and hung up. Diana texted. Wall Street Journal just dropped the GSA story. Headline: Key VanceLink federal contracts assigned to Vance Core prior to leadership shift. Market's going to open ugly tomorrow. Marcus. SEC just called. They want to sit down tomorrow morning. Voluntary. For now. I'll handle it. Also, Victor Lin is distancing himself publicly. He released a statement saying he's reviewing his position on the board. Translation: he's jumping ship. Good. Let him run. I open my laptop and check the Vance Core internal dashboard. System uptime, 100%. Active federal contracts, 14. Monthly recurring revenue, $87 million. None of it touched Van Slink's books anymore. At 8 p.m., the news cycle shifted again. CNBC cut to Paul Castellano, live from his Greenwich office. The interviewer asked about the block trade. Paul shrugged. Relax. We invested in Nathan Vance, not the Vance Link brand. His track record speaks for itself. Vance Core represents the future of AI infrastructure. We're proud to support that vision. But you bought shares in Vance Link, not Vance Core, the interviewer pressed. We bought what was available, Paul said, and we're confident that, over time, the market will recognize the underlying value. Or not. Either way, we're in it for the long haul. Translation: he didn't care if Vance Link went to zero. He'd hedged his bet on me. My phone buzzed again. Sarah Chun, the Stanford professor. I almost declined, but answered out of morbid curiosity. Nathan, she said, her voice strained. I didn't know about the IP transfer, about the contracts. Evelyn said it was just a leadership change. She lied. I said, I see that now. I'm resigning from the board. Effective immediately. I'll issue a statement. Save it. I said, your statement's already written. It's called a resignation letter. Send it. Maybe next time. Do your due diligence before selling your vote to the highest bidder. I hung up before she could reply. By 9 p.m., the Soho party was over. Social media was flooded with clips. Evelyn's frozen smile. Julian's panic retreat. The half-empty glasses of champagne. Someone posted a photo of a discarded New Era banner crumpled in a corner. The caption, "End an era." Diana texted, Victor Lin officially resigned. 2 other independents are following. Evelyn's lost her board majority. Marcus. Trustees just froze the Carlyle Family Trust voting rights pending internal review. Evelyn's effectively powerless at VanceLink. I closed my eyes for a moment, then opened them and typed one last message. Broadcast to both Diana and Marcus. Tomorrow, we file the rest. The full transfer docs. The trust violations. The Cayman wires. Let's make sure the world knows exactly who killed VanceLink. I set the phone down and stood. Walked to the window. Somewhere across the city, Evelyn was realizing the magnitude of her mistake. Julian was probably deleting emails. Victor Lin was rewriting his memoirs. They could have had a partnership. Instead, they chose a power play. And I chose to win. I turned back to the laptop, opened a new document. Title, Lessons Learned. Under it, I wrote, never let sentiment sit at the boardroom table. Never underestimate a man who counts his exits before he enters a room. And never, ever, throw a party before the ink is dry. I saved it, closed the laptop. The collapse was complete. The rebuilding, that was already underway. The courthouse hallway smelled like cheap tile cleaner and expensive perfume. Evelyn stood by the railing in a charcoal gray Armano suit, her hair pinned back, so tight it looked painful. Her attorney, Richard Paltrow from Sullivan Cromwell, was flipping through a binder like it contained the meaning of life. I nodded at Marcus. Let's finish this. Marcus adjusted his cufflinks. Judge Halpern's in a mood today. He hates pretrial theatrics. Keep it clinical. I'm feeling generous. I said. Evelyn stepped forward before we reached the courtroom doors. Nathan, please, we can settle this without. Without what? I cut in. Without you trying to claw back half of Vance Core in a divorce you forced? Save it. Evelyn, we both know how this ends. Richard Paltrow cleared his throat. Mr. Vance, my client is prepared to offer a concession on the prenuptial enforcement in exchange for a minority equity stake in Vance Core. Something symbolic. 5%. I laughed once. 5% of $9 billion is $450 million. That's not symbolic. Richard, that's a ransom. Evelyn's voice dropped. It's not about the money. It's about recognition. I was your partner. You were my wife. I said, partners don't stage coups. Partners don't move 12 million in trust funds to their boyfriend's offshore accounts. Partners don't forge board consents. You want recognition? Recognize that you played yourself. Paltrow's jaw tightened. We have ground to challenge the prenup on the basis of duress and inadequate disclosure. Marcus slid a thumb drive across the space between us. Then have fun explaining this to Judge Halpern. It's a forensic reconstruction of the Cayman transfers, the Reeves Innovations ledger, and the email chain where your client authorized a diversion of marital assets 6 weeks before she filed for separation. Duress. Richard, the only thing under duress here is your client's credibility. Evelyn's eyes flicked to the drive. You wouldn't? I already did. I said, it's Exhibit A, along with Exhibits B through K. Marcus filed the supplemental motion last night. If you push this to trial, I don't just walk away clean. I walk away while your family trust gets subpoenaed by the Delaware Attorney General. Think the Carlisle name survived that headline? She paled. Paltrow sighed and pulled her aside. They whispered for 90 seconds. When they turned back, Paltrow's expression had shifted from combative to resigned. We'll stipulate to the enforceability of the prenuptial agreement in its entirety, he said. No claims against VanceCore, VanceLink, or any affiliated entities. In exchange, my client withdraws all pending motions and releases any marital interest. Put it in writing. Marcus said, sign today, file today, or we go before Halpern, and I start my opening statement with, Your Honor, this is a case about greed, fraud, and a very expensive midlife crisis. 10 minutes later, we were in the judge's chambers. Papers signed. Stipulation entered. Evelyn didn't look at me when she left. She walked like her spine had been replaced with wet cement. Out on the steps, Marcus lit a cigarette, even though it was illegal. That was easier than I expected. She bluffed. I said, she always bluffs. The second she realized I'd drag her trustees into open court, she folded. What about Julian? Diana asked, joining us from the curb. She'd been waiting by the town car, scrolling through her phone. He's been posting again. Medium essay. 7,000 words on betrayal and the commodification of vision. I shrugged. Let him write. No one reads Medium anymore except failed founders and venture capitalists with insomnia. He's also shopping a book proposal. Diana said, The Ghost in the Machine, My Time at VanceLink. Early buzz says publishers are passing. Smart publishers. I said, because if he defames me, I sue. If he discloses proprietary info, I sue. If he so much as mentions VanceCore's API structure, I sue. He's got no leverage and no income. Let him scream into the void. Marcus tossed a cigarette. SEC closed the inquiry. By the way, no charges. Paul's team did a great job burying the paper trail. We're clean. Good. I said, then it's time to move forward. 3 weeks later, I was in Austin. VanceCore's new headquarters took up 3 floors of a downtown tower. Glass walls, black desks, no open floor plan nonsense, just results. Diana walked into my office without knocking. Term sheet from Andreessen. They won in at a $22 billion valuation, up from 16 last quarter. Counter at 24. I said, and tell them we're only giving up 3%, not 5. Done, she said. Also, GSA approved the $2 billion blanket purchase agreement, 5-year term. We're the exclusive AI infrastructure provider for DHS, DoD, and Energy. I nodded. Tell legal to tighten the indemnity clauses. I don't want a repeat of the VanceLink mess if a contractor screws up. Already done, she said. And Paul called. He wants to co-invest in the Series C. Says he's never seen a pivot this clean. Tell him he's welcome. I said, but remind him he owns VanceLink's carcass. I own the future. If he tries to merge the two, I walk. She smiled. You become ruthless. I become precise. I said, there's a difference. Later that afternoon, my assistant patched through a call. Unknown caller. Says it's regarding a personal matter. I considered declining. Then hit accept. Vance. A hesitant male voice. Mr. Vance, this is Kevin from the New Yorker. We spoke briefly. Months ago, I remember. I said, you wanted a profile. I said no. Right. Well, the landscape's changed. Van Score's valuation, the federal contracts, the fallout at VanceLink. People are calling it the most brutal founder exit in Silicon Valley history. We like to revisit. Kevin, I said, listen closely. I don't do profiles. I don't do retrospectives. And I definitely don't do redemption arcs for people who burn me. Write your story. Use the public filings. Quote the Wall Street Journal. But don't call me again. I hung up that evening. I got a text from an unknown number, a screenshot of a tweet. Julian, naturally, true innovation isn't measured in billions, but in impact. Some forget that. I won't. I didn't reply. I forwarded it to Diana with one line. Track his engagement. If it drops below 200 likes per post, we've won. She replied instantly, already at 147. Mostly bots. Trending downward. I set the phone down and opened my terminal. Lines of code scrolled past. The new encryption protocol was nearly finished. It would make VanScore's infrastructure impenetrable and indispensable. My phone buzzed one last time. A news alert. VanceLink announces layoffs. Stock its all-time low. Below it, a quote from an analyst. Without the core IP or federal contracts, VanceLink is essentially a marketing firm with a fancy logo. I closed the alert. Evelyn had her trust fund. Julian had his Medium posts. Victor Lin had his regret. Sarah Chun had her resignation. I had $9, $8 billion, a $24 billion valuation, and a federal contract that guaranteed the next 5 years of growth. I leaned back, fingers steepled. On the monitor, a system prompt blinked. VanScore Secure Network. All systems operational. I typed a single line into the command line. $initiate __3. Target equals global, then I hit enter. Somewhere, a server hummed. Somewhere, a competitor flinched. Somewhere, Evelyn refreshed her brokerage app and saw another red arrow. The game wasn't over. It had just changed tables. And I was the only one who knew how to deal the cards.